Okay, let's get started. This morning we had a session under the title Services for Multilingual Europe, the industry side. And what you see here now is kind of like the complementary session, and it's called Services for Multilingual Europe, the research side. It's quite interesting because not everybody here is from a big research center or university. Actually, 3 of our panelists are from industries, and that's very, very encouraging because there's a good mix between industry and research, and it shows you that research is not happening just in the traditional venues, especially in the area of language technologies. Now, for this session, there's no slides, there's no prepared presentations, there's only a sheet of paper. The way we want to proceed is we want to have an engaging panel discussion, and we would like to involve you, the audience. If you have questions, please follow up on us. And there's mics in the room, and we'll try to catch you and get your input on this discussion. To start with, I hand over to my panelists. They will introduce themselves briefly. Before they do that, I just give you some idea of some of the points that we're hoping to cover in this panel discussion. So we'd like to start with, what do we already have? What are the tools, the services, the data sets that are mature that we can supply to the Connecting Europe facility? Then we'd like to look a little bit at which services. Is it just basic services? Is it sophisticated services? Full machine translation, for example, full data analytics, etc. How scalable, how fast are these services? What's the quality of what is available at the moment? Which services? Is it speech, machine translation, analytics, multimodal interaction, etc.? Everything? Or do we need to concentrate on a particular area? For whom are these services intended? Is it end users, the general public, industry, researchers, all of them? What are the links to the semantic web? The links to big data. Semantic web and big data are not the same, they're different, and that came out really importantly in Kimmo Rossi's presentation just a few minutes ago. Given that resources are limited, do we need to prioritize? How should we prioritize? What are the gaps linking to the research side? Which areas are under-resourced at the moment? And finally, of course, this is supposed to lead into business models. So to what extent can we already foresee business models, prepare for business models, support business models, and engage with business models? Okay, at this stage, let me hand over. Kimmo has already been introduced, so let me pass on to Núria for her 3-minute introduction and overview.
Okay, thank you very much, Josef. My name is Núria. I'm professor at the Universitat Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona, in Spain, and I've been the coordinator of the PANACEA project. PANACEA was a 7 framework program project, started in January 2010 and finished December last year. The partners of the project were ILC in Pisa in Italy, ILSP in Athens in Greece, Dublin City University, Cambridge University, LinguaTech, and ELDA and WE. The PANACEA has deployed a factory of language resources, understanding that language resources are one of the maximal bottlenecks for the deployment of language technologies or for the use of language technologies. The factory is made of different production lines. We call this a series of workflows whose aim is to produce automatically the language resources required by machine translation systems of different types: bilingual, aligned, corporal, lexicon, monolingual, bilingual, well, a number of resources. But one of the assets I would like to concentrate here is that PANACEA has ground this factory in a platform, has set up a platform understood as an interoperability space to make it possible the composition of these workflows, but also many others possible, but by just chaining the operation of tools that are called via web services. We have used advanced open tools to give or to get a smart handling of these workflows. These workflows admit parallelization, pooling, error recovery, so they are able to handle large files. I don't know, big data, because here the scale is different, but they can handle large tasks and large files. These workflows are made of these web services, and now at our PANACEA registry that I invite you to consult, we have deployed more than 160 services. These are basic language technology tools, annotation, enrichment, dependency parsing, part of a speech, but also other services like normalization, anonymization, small tasks that are really required in many of our systems. These web services also can be operated with a web client, what makes them very attractive for end users, human end users, I mean now. And then we are being used, or our services are being used by a broad range of people that are willing to test, to try to experiment with these technologies. And our current users range from students, PhD students building systems for their PhDs, to R&D departments of different companies that are just trying to what extent language technologies are useful for their own systems and applications. PANACEA is also willing to integrate more web services. For this purpose, we have extensively documented our common interfaces and traveling object definitions. These are the specifications of the two only requirements to join the platform. Common interfaces are meant to normalize or to have the same access to all the tools so that you can substitute one component by another without further programming of your workflows. So it's easy to plug in and out different components. And the traveling object definition is meant to allow any web service to accept a particular object, the data that goes from one service to another in these workflows, and to deliver also an object that is known to the other services of the platform. So I've gone too fast, but I invite you to consult all this data and all this information at our website, panacea-lr.eu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Núria. Stelios.
I am Stelios Piperidis. I'm the head of Natural Language Processing and Knowledge Extraction Department at ILSP, Athena Research Center in Athens, Greece, no surprise. We've been dealing for the last 20-25 years with a wide range of language technology research and application development, with a particular focus on information extraction, multilingual information processing, and the necessary infrastructures for developing and evaluating these technologies. For the last couple of years, I've devoted a substantial portion of my time to the latter issue, the issue of infrastructures, data infrastructures, both in my capacity as a president of ELRA, the European Language Resources Association, until last year, and as coordinator, supervisor of MetaShare, which was one of the pillars, one of the three pillars of MetaNet. I will not dare list the partners in MetaNet. It was a huge network, 4 projects spanning almost all Europe. Now, focusing on MetaShare, what MetaShare tries to do, it tries to provide an answer to the issue of data infrastructures and all the related questions that have to do with data identification, data documentation, data availability, data visibility, etc. What it provides language resource providers and language resource consumers with a sort of meeting place. It provides, it enables language resource providers to create repositories of their data sets, repositories of their tools, repositories of their services, and provides them with functionalities to document their assets, to link their repositories to a network of the repositories of other providers, and to keep track, if you want, of the use that is being made of their assets. In tandem, it provides language resource consumers, language resource seekers, with all those mechanisms that allow them to discover what is there that may be suitable for their purposes, and easily, at very few clicks of a button, to download, acquire the necessary resources, be they tools or be they data. Now, MetaShare is open, it is free to use, The underlying software that we are offering is also open source and free to use. It has been deployed already by the 37, if I remember well, members of MetaShare in MetaNet, representing something like 25 countries. There are 26 repositories up and running right now, maintained by the community. And the current offering, as we said yesterday with Hans, exceeds 2,300 language resources, both data packages and tools and services. What we're currently busy with in the framework of the Qt Launchpad project is to extend the offered functionalities within MetaShare by adding data processing functionalities, by marrying MetaShare and PANACEA. So in a few months, we will be able to provide new repositories where we will have some of the data processing web services that were developed in the framework of PANACEA deployed from within MetaShare. This will enable, will turn MetaShare into a dynamic infrastructure, an infrastructure that can organically grow by itself. And here I think I can stop.
Thank you, Stelios. Can I invite Volker?
Yeah. Hello, Volker Steinbiss. I'm the managing director of Archipel Projects, and we handle the EU-Rich project. Don't be afraid, it's not just about project management, and so I have a background in language technology, so I was in Philips Research, Philips Speech Processing, was in several projects like Speakers, Verbmobil, Smartcom, TC Star, Quero, and also in the board of ELRA. So what we do is we try to make the project run smoothly and help the coordinator, that's Alex Weibel at KIT. And let me just mention the other academic partners, that's Hermann Ney from RWTH, Marcello Federico from FBK, it's Philip Köhn from Edinburgh, and then we have Krzysztof Marasek from PJIIT in Warsaw and Dekai Wu in Hong Kong. And they do speech translation, but that's not what actually EU-Rich is about. It's more about bringing this to the market. And we found a very important point is making it accessible in an easy way to end users or end user companies. That's why we built a platform or a service infrastructure where on the one hand you click in the software modules, the engines, speech recognition and machine translation engines, and also other ones. And that's done by Mobile Technologies and Pairvoice, our two commercial partners responsible for that service infrastructure. And then in order to show it's really something that is, say, not only specialized to something that, we knew beforehand in research, but it's something that is really flexible. We have 4 different use cases. One is actually captioning, that's handled by Red Bee Media. They basically do all the captioning for BBC. And in that use case, for example, we learned it's not only good to have, say, a good technology, so they were quite amazed by the performance on a certain subset. Weather reports, we never would have wanted to do that, but that was, say, a commercial interest from their side. But they also needed other things that we have in our technology portfolio. For example, they need capitalization, punctuation, want to have captions that have a certain size, etc. So we try to be a little on that side in that use case. Other use cases are lecture translation. There is a system operational in Karlsruhe that's really working on a daily basis. We work on, we have a partner in unified communication, that's a French company, Andrejs. They will really use the system, not in a paid version, but really use in an end customer version for webinars. And last but not least, we try to help the European Parliament. And there also, we learned about, what users like. Of course, the professional translators were, say, not super enthusiastic working on, say, machine translation that is somewhere in between in quality, but they were very interested in getting additional tools to prepare for the next session and so on. So we tried to hard to make it easy for, say, prospective customers to use the technology. And again, one important point is that service infrastructure that is really lightweight and rather easy to employ. And I think we are halfway through and it looks quite good. Thanks.
Thank you, Volker. And we're going to stay with the industry side. So can I pass on to Hans, please?
I'm Hans Freyberg. I'm the CEO of Cocomore. We are an agency that is a service provider for communication and IT with offices in Frankfurt, in Sevilla, and in Geneva. We work a lot on the content creation, content management, content publication side, and with the corresponding systems. We're also very much involved with open source software, and we serve a number of clients who are internationally oriented and have multilingual needs, and all that brought us into the MultilingualWeb-LT project, about which you've heard already yesterday in extenso, so I'll try to do some real-time summarizing here. The MultilingualWeb-LT project, also the LT Web project, dubbed because it's quite a long name, has brought together partners from research and industry in different areas, in the area of language technology, in the area of localization services, and also in the area of content production. And basically we have done three things in this project. First of all, we have defined a standard, the ITS 2.0 standard. This is a metadata standard which allows you to tag on a lot of relevant information to texts in order to improve the quality of translation, but also the efficiency of the translation process. And then we did not just define the standard, we also saw it through to the status of official W3C recommendation. Apart from defining this standard, we created reference implementations which make use of the standard throughout all stages of the translation process. And to this end, different tools were built. And these tools allow to create multilingual content. They support the creation of multilingual content in word processing programs, but also and above all in content management systems. And these tools allow to manage efficiently the translation process, especially the type of process where you have different and various kinds of parties coming in, like providers of localization services or of machine translation or of terminology handling. Now, finally, what we did is we used the reference implementations to show the business value of the standards and the tools which use it. And to that end, we at Cocomore cooperated with one of our clients, the VDMA, that is the Association of German Machinery Builders. And we also cooperated with one of our partners in the LT Web project, that is Linguistics, a localization service provider from Spain. I think some of you heard Pedro Diaz yesterday. He's the CEO of Linguistics. And what we did together is we built an end-to-end translation solution for the VDMA, a translation solution that has turned out to be particularly efficient and streamlined. And I think you have seen the results yesterday with regard to cost reduction and increase in speed. So to sum it up more briefly, what we did in the MultilingualWeb-LT project, the LT Web project, is we created some of the building blocks of what could be in the future a European language technology service platform. And especially we created building blocks for a bridge between the content side and the language technology side. And that bridge seems to be very important for the future of the application of language technologies in Europe and all over the world. And I would say that the standard we defined is kind of the glue between the building blocks of this bridge and of the platform, the service platform that most of us are thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans. And we have one more industry view on the research side by Andrejs.
Hello. Okay. Hello. My name is Andrejs Vasiljevs, and I'm chairman of the board of language technology and language service company Tilde. We're located in Baltic countries and with offices in Riga, Tallinn, and Vilnius. And we see our role in transferring the best results, technologies, methods, and tools from research domain into widely used mass market applications. And in recent years, we see a massive proliferation of various cloud services. And the cloud provides numerous benefits, and we believe that these benefits could be enjoyed by those who need language technologies. And so we initiated two projects. What I want to present, a project called Let's MT for creating infrastructure for machine translation services that enable users to train their customized machine translation engines, run machine translation services, and also where we do provide a large variety of data for machine translation training and evaluation. And that project was carried out by the consortium of University of Edinburgh, University of Copenhagen, Semlab company, Moravia company, and University of Zagreb. And I'm glad that after a year from the end of the EU funding phase of the project, it's thriving, and being Let's MT platform is widely used. For example, in Latvia, it serves as a basis for a couple of online machine translation platforms or services. University of Copenhagen uses a Let's MT platform in their education process and curriculum translation. Just a recent example that in Lithuania, Kimmo presented this new program in Lithuania on language technology development, and Let's MT platform has been selected as a platform for machine translation public service provision in Lithuania. To better serve the needs of language workers, a particular area that we want to address in translation process terminology is very important, and it's very challenging in both human translation and machine translation. And we now are implementing a new project called Taas, Terminology as a Service, where we transfer some advanced tools and techniques from research domain into cloud-based services, so that users can easily identify terms in their documents, get translations for those terms, participate in data cleaning and validation, and use these terms in both human translation and for customizing machine translation systems. And I would also like to say that we, in these projects, we see those new demands that were stressed by Daniel Marcu in his presentation yesterday. But it's very important to address those needs for scalability, performance, reliability, stability of services that are the set of requirements that are not always taken into account in research, but that are very important when you are implementing practical usable applications for massive use. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrejs, and let me hand over to Tamás.
My name is Tamás Váradi of the Research Institute for Linguistics of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, and I'm the coordinator of the iTranslate 4 project, which aimed to create an integrated portal bringing quality machine translation for all official European languages, a kind of one-stop solution for drawing on leading European online MT providers. It is intended for the general public as well as application developers and LSP companies. The consortium included 9 industry partners, Systran, Prompt, Linguatech, PWN, MEBIS, Sunda, Skyco, Trident. You will notice that all of them belong to the rule-based machine translation camp. But it is an open platform, and in fact, there were already companies joining after the finish of the project. What are the results? The portal is up and running, offering machine translation for 33 languages. And among the special features, I would highlight that it offers alternative translations ranked by quality. This is a unique feature because no MT company does 100% translation at all time. And therefore, the users can benefit from a range of alternative solutions with minimal knowledge they can pick and choose, even within fragments of the translated parts. We also are operating with a variety of suitable pivot languages, as against just using one. And we offer, in addition to text translation, we offer web page translation, web search translation, or translation in chat in an ergonomic way, offering language recognition, targeted keyboard layout, etc. We also provide links to human translation services, and we developed plugins to various CAT systems, and we also have an API for application development. And it's all there, and I'm ready to show you in the demo session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tamás. It's clear that what we've seen here is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a massive portfolio of tools, of services, of data, the strong concentration on interfaces, on interoperability standards, etc. But it's fragmented. It's not put together, and this is the time to harvest. Yesterday, I think it was Al Lommel introduced an interesting term that was abandonware. We don't want this to be abandonware. We need to find mechanisms to pool this, to make this available, in particular in the CEF. So I'd like to start the discussion, how do we best do this? And this is maybe initially a question for Kimmo and then for the other panelists, and then of course I would like to open the floor to get your view on this.
Okay. I also referred to some issues that came up yesterday that are related to this. We are constantly facing the question when we are publicly funding something. So we have 2 questions basically, 2 levels. First of all, aren't we interfering with the market? Why are we subsidizing companies? And the second level of that question is, why do we fund it publicly at the European level, and why don't we let the member states fund it, give public funding at the member state level? So it's a real real question that we have to think all the time, keeping clear strategies of why we are funding something. And we typically say that we address market failures. And that's easy to say, but it's more difficult to analyze what it really means. And the other thing is that we want to create a favorable climate, entrepreneurial climate. So that's the other thing. Now, this leads to something that just giving funding, pouring funding to SMEs is not the right answer for creating an entrepreneurial climate. Because the harsh reality is that only a very small fraction of the SMEs are successful and actually do have the capacity to grow. So there must be some way of selection. So that is throwing funding at SMEs and doing nothing else just leads to a situation where the agony of the SMEs is prolonged. They would otherwise go bankrupt earlier, but thanks to our support, they go bankrupt later. Put it bluntly. So that's why we are now putting more effort in creating a whole sort of ecosystem. And part of that ecosystem is access, is an infrastructure which gives access to certain assets and functionality. So infrastructure of language resources and language services, something basic. Now in CEF, we intend to do this in the first phase only for this pan-European public services. But the original idea, if you look at the old CEF proposal before the budget cut, was actually to serve the whole building of the single internal market. And I maintain that that is the ultimate goal. It's not just to build governmental services that are multilingual. No, I mean that's obviously as a side effect at least, or as a main effect of that must be that all digital services can become multilingual, so including e-commerce, for example, because that will have the huge impact, not the governmental systems alone, but enabling cross-border e-commerce better than it is today. To this availability issue, data availability, and Marion Must said in her presentation, as a desiderata to the Commission, I think it was something to that we want data to be available, so data that arises from the projects or language resources that arise from the EU-funded projects. And that's very true, and here we share a common view and opinion, and actually it's also the Commission's priority to be more in the future in programs, to be more ambitious about encouraging publicly funded projects to make not only their scientific publications available, like it is the case now with this open science scheme, but also to make the data available that they create, the data assets that they create in the project. Now there is a lot of opposition to this, and it's a difficult negotiation. But I share this concern, and I think it's a good idea, and that we can work towards that goal that may be somewhere, maybe not in the beginning of Horizon 2020, but somewhere in course of the program, there will be an open data pilot where we introduce a special clause to the grant agreement saying that any data generated in the project must be made available under these favorable conditions to anybody for any purpose, so research or commercial purpose, because only by doing that it can really create value. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, that was a detailed answer. Can I pass the question on to the rest of the panelists? Is it really a marriage between PANACEA and MetaShare? Do we have a mega share or a mega ELDA, or something like this? That is one option for supplying this ecosystem that Kimmo was talking about.
Let me detail some of the strategies in PANACEA preserving what the web services we have done. Actually, all the partners agree on a support schema for at least 2 years, so all the web services will be up and running, supported by the different institutions for 2 years. But besides that, we have also started conversations with large facilities like Praise, supercomputing. They are, Praise, sorry. I said it in Spanish. One of the things we found out is that these large facilities for supercomputing and data storage have a special interest also to having services that allow how to use this data. So for us has been also a possibility to move some of our web services to these large facilities, and then this obviously supports also the longevity, the long life of our web services. Being web services also has the implication that you can frozen your machine, so you don't need to reinstall, to update. So it also gives a nice feature for preserving it in time. So you can frozen your virtual machine and let it go forever.
Thank you. More comments from our industry partners? Yeah, Hans.
I think it's very important what Kimmo said, that we should not just throw money at people who are somehow busy in our area of language technology, but we rather have to look at why we incur the risk of producing abandonware and not, let me call it, loveware, right? And let me just take as a good example for the difference between abandonware and loveware the smartphone, because long before the iPhone there was smartphone technology, but most people didn't use it. And then came the iPhone and people fell in love with it, they used it, and then a whole ecosystem of smartphones and smart mobile communication has sprung up. So why is language technology not loveware today? Well, I think coming from the content creation and from the content production side, it's not loveware because it's simply not available at your fingertip. When you are working in your product information management system, when you are working in your digital asset management system, in your content management system, in your creative suite, all the kinds of tools that content creators, content managers use. And you cannot just push a button and do a little drag and drop to use language technology. You will just not use it probably. And we can have many web interfaces and repositories and APIs. As long as we don't put language technology really at people's fingertips in a lovable way, there will be the problem and the risk of abandonware. Now, what can politics, what can the EU do about that? I think above all what they can do is foster the development of standards and of standard interfaces. Because the aloofness of language technology from the real potential users is largely due to the fact that the different systems of content users and language technology are not really interoperable to the degree that they are integrated. And also among themselves, many of these tools, language technology tools, are not interoperable either. And for many multilingual, for many language technology tasks, you need to combine different tools. You don't just need one machine translation system. Maybe you want to use several ones, as Tamás explained, right, to have some alternatives. But you also want to use syntax analysis to prepare a machine translation. And maybe you want to use named entity recognition, etc. So you have to do a lot of combination. And if you have to do that by yourself, and if you have to become kind of a language technology application engineer to use it, it will not be used, and we will be in the realm of abandonware. So I think the EU, by fostering the development of standards, of standard interfaces, and of reference implementations, can really make us drive the road from abandonware to loveware.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any reactions from the audience? Abandonware, loveware? Yeah? Yeah, well,
it's a comment, well,
yeah.
maybe it wasn't working because I was going to say it might sound a bit conservative with regard to this concept of innovation and connecting to what Hans has just said about this plug and play thing. I think that innovation is not a means in itself, it's a means for an end, and we want to arrive at simplicity. My teacher used to say, "Nous ne sommes pas avant-garde." We are not before the front, we are arrière-garde. And through that, he was one of the greatest innovators in the field where my background was. And if we are keeping those basic concepts, then we arrive at this standardization, which is necessary, and through that, we innovate. There is so much fantastic technology today which is already there. All of these things are there. And it's really putting things together in a harmonious way and cooperating in these different ways. This is just my way of looking at it. Thank you.
We have another interaction from the floor. It's over here.
Yeah, hello. During the MultilingualWeb-LT project was shown something that we have to take into account. We were able to develop in less than 2 years a standard for metadata for adding value to the content. But one of the proposals that was done since the beginning, that was the basics of a standard for the interoperability, that my colleagues laughed because which was readiness. Readiness was the SIM for a standard interoperability system. We didn't have time for developing that because it's more complex to develop a standard to connect systems than to develop a standard to annotate content. Because the actors and the complexity is much higher, and you have to agree with much more people and actors. So SOLAS, for example, which is an initiative in that direction, another initiative, I think that this is a key factor. In our system that I showed yesterday, we are already connecting different back office technologies because you never know if tomorrow you will have a better solution for a new need. So really this needs to be supported not only in the technical side, but in MetaNet, infrastructure groups, because to agree a lot of people about this kind of really processing a standard, it's much more difficult than just, well, not just, but that annotating and added value and open that linked data standards.
Okay, thank you. Earlier on I said resources are limited, and because of that we need to prioritize, and of course resources are limited also in terms of time, and we're actually eating literally into our lunchtime. So let me just raise one more thing and just do a really quick round and then see what happens. Because I think that Hans's contribution links very nicely to the question, like, who are these services for? Is it the general public? Is it the SMEs? Is it industries? Is it researchers, etc.? Do we want to do all of this at the same time? Is that even a possibility? Or how do we get clear, who we're doing this for? Can I invite contributions from the floor? From the panel.
I think picking the right application, that's really the key to being successful, because we know we have this imperfect technology and we have to pick something where it works just at the point where people say, wow, this is really useful and it's good enough and it helps us. And you have to do more than just use the basic technology. You have to do things that are, say, really appreciated by the user. I found your comment really helpful when I think of the iPhone. When I was back in the electronics industry, there was a time when 82 companies produced mobile phones, and only 3 were profitable, and everybody else was losing money. And it was like everybody was desperate and saying, you know, why do we do this? You know, we can't make a business out of it. And making a business out of language technology, I think this is a question. I'm really wondering why it's not often explicitly stated here, but this is a real problem for the community, having a good business model and being sure that the investments come back. I think in a situation where you have some services for free, it is, say, more demanding to define your product in a way that it's, say, sufficiently rewarded by the market. But I believe it must be possible. I mean, as you said, just make a good product with a good user interface that really supports the needs of the customers. Say, have, for example, your cloud living in Europe, you know, on European ground, respecting European privacy laws. Make sure that when you process data for companies, it's really hosted on the company side, stuff like that. I think, yes, it is demanding to find the right application and the right user scenario. It's demanding to find the right business case, but I think it must be possible, as possible as creating a cell phone that after 10 years of being annoyed with cell phones, suddenly people love to use.
Mm. Yeah, I think Volker is absolutely right. Users and business models are very, very closely intertwined, and I think many of the questions that we raised are much, much too big for the time that we have for discussion. So let's stop here, let's go for lunch, and thank you for your contributions from the floor, and thank you to the panelists.